Anyway, chaps, I've got this guy here called Zak. Zak, you're an upcoming rapper, aren't you?
Indeed.
And you kind of came on my radar. Well, you messaged the page really because I'm going to be honest with you, mate. You messaged the page. You've had issues with depression,
PTSD, a lot of emotional trauma, dealing with a narcissistic father my entire life. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I didn't know that bit, but okay, that's fair enough. Because the one thing is I was just like, okay, I've been approached by rappers and people, artists in whatever, in many things, and it's always about PR.
Right.
It's let's help out this little charity and all this kind of. I do marketing for a living. I've played that game. Do you get me? Charity thing. But there's something about you. I'm just like, no, this guy is actually quite genuine. And the one thing is how old are you? 20.
21.
And you're talking about PTSD, and I'm like, fuck. So tell us your story, mate.
So it really starts, I think, from the age of 5 when, well, even to be honest, further than that, when I was 5 months old, my parents split up. It was a very, very ugly divorce battle. And we were living in Malta, and I was essentially in and out of court from then already, fighting this battle between my mother and my father. And I had to essentially get, I was at 5 years old, I had to go get therapy because I had to basically learn how to put my father in a box because he was such a difficult person to deal with at that time.
Yeah.
And it didn't really go that well. I stopped doing that therapy. I don't think it was really working considering he was such a prominent figure in my life at that time. It's literally bouncing between my mother's house and my father's every other day. And my father had the most custody. In Malta, it's quite a normal thing where the man has the most power in those family dynamics. And I was living in Malta until I turned 12. And then we had to be honest, there's a lot more where essentially I used to just play around as a kid. I used to get loads of bruises on my leg and so on and so forth. And eventually came home to my father's with a bunch of bruises. And I told him, I'm just probably out having fun. And keep in mind, I was very, I always wanted to please my parents, both sides. I hated upsetting either side. And then I remember just my father saying, "Oh, did your mother ever hit you?" And I was like, "No." And he's like, "Are you sure you can tell me?" And me wanting just to feel loved by this narcissistic person who just cannot demonstrate it, in ways which, for example, obviously, naturally a mother is very different in that dynamic, in that respect. But still, it was very hard to get a reaction out of him that was always very loving. So I said yes, and it was a complete lie. So that massive court case initiated where then what turned out to be for my welfare was really just trying to get my mother in jail. And it was very, very close. That course went out the window because essentially I had to identify between a spoon and a fork, and the spoon was supposedly the weapon my mom hit me with. And in the study, the whole thing was that I identified that it was a spoon, but I said it in Maltese. So I had to decide. They put a fork and a spoon in front of me when I went to court, and they said, "Right, tell me which one's the spoon and which one's the fork." I'm a 4-year-old, and my Maltese is still very rough. And I named the spoon the fork and the fork the spoon. So they're like, "Right, yeah, this is not real. This is a lie." So they closed that. Moved on. At 12, I moved countries, and my mom had a new partner, who turned out to be my stepfather, and we have my brother as well. And at the age of 14, he passed away with a massive heart attack right in front of me. And essentially, it was just me, my mother, my brother, up until till today, really. And then I just pretty much got my head down with basketball. That was really the main thing. I was an athlete. And then at 16, things just started to go down south. I became associated with the wrong people. And I just went on this really, really just toxic journey filled with all the wrong things until today, really. 21 years old. And I managed to change my life around about 6 months ago.
Yeah.
After a massive breakdown. But it was all for a good cause. As my auntie came, and then I think just everything being so difficult, she said, I think it's time to get therapy.
Yeah.
And I for some reason I listened, and I was like, okay, and doing hypnosis, and it's worked a charm for me.
Wow. Oh, that's good you got an aunt like that, man. That's really,
She's
because
wonderful.
you're in like that age group, aren't you? Because I think anyone under 24, maybe 21 and younger, I think more so during COVID, that they've been the country's punching bags. I think this country, I've got to be careful what I'm saying because we're a charity and got trustees, but I think it's disgusting with the way we treat the younger people these days is absolutely disgusting.
I did grow up with that. Yeah, I grew up with a very traditional father, at least, where he used to be like, just get on with it. Pluck it up. Don't wallow in it too much. Just keep moving, mate. Just keep moving. Leave it. Suck it up. Go on. So I think we definitely saw a lot of that thinking.
Yeah. So how did you? Because you must have been pretty bad for your aunt to say, dude.
Yeah. Well, I was really. I just came back after just doing one too many substances. Naturally, it just did not go well. Yeah. And I was clearly, I think, just suppressing so much. And I just had like this massive meltdown. And then 3 days later, I mean, for the next 4 weeks, essentially, I had a very hard time sleeping. I felt like I was on seriously high alert. Constantly, it's very tiring. By the end of the day, you want to sleep, but you can't. Your brain's too awake, and it was insane. It was driving me insane. And then, my auntie just came one day, and we sat down and I had a chat. And my mum was there, and me and my mum are very open with each other. So I always told her everything, and she's always been immensely supportive. So she always listened. She never criticized me for it. Always, just trying to push me in the right direction.
Yeah.
And then my auntie just came in and she said, look, listen, I know someone. She's wonderful. I've been to her for years. And she does PTSD, and she also does just general emotional trauma. And I've ended up discovering so much. Everything I'm talking to you about now is literally a result of the last 4 months diving through all my childhood memories and being able to dig and begin to see everything from an objective point of view.
Yeah. So what made you listen to your aunt rather than, because obviously you do hip hop, you're a rapper and all this kind of stuff. I've been in the music game. I've DJed some big old clubs. I've had that life, and that life sucks you in of coke, pills, blah blah blah. Yeah. And the thing is, especially when you're an artist, there's no better feeling when, okay, in my day it was record boxes, now it's USB stick. But anyway, is when you're walking through those super clubs like Camden Palais, Bagley's and whatever else, and you're walking through everybody, through all of these queues, don't even get searched. Everyone's like, oh, can you get us in? And you're a god. You feel like a king because everyone's praising you. How did you not get sucked into that, especially hip hop? I think hip hop is one of the worst things for encouraging bullshit. But no, I'm a fan of hip hop. I'm not anti hip hop. I am a fan of hip hop. Before you hip hoppers start going, who's anti and all this. Do you get what I mean? But something is very, very. I was speaking to somebody a year or 2 years ago. Like they were rapping about their new car, the Subaru Impreza, 50 grand's worth of car. I was like, mate, you drive a Clio.
See, this is well, as an artist, that was one of the hardest things to get my head around, because I was 16, and when I swore that every bit of music I will make is going to be authentic, and what I meant by that is that I'm going to be myself, and I want to do something that, I guess it's less popular in the industry, which is just not talking about drugs, women, cars. It's just not me. I don't come from that background, and I've actually been blessed to see and be around people that have had loads of money and to also be struggling. And the difference is, I think, well, the thing that I think appeals to people is sort of this idea that you can be happy, you feel free when you're around money. And actually, quite frankly, after, you know, being around people that are really wealthy, they have just as many problems as people that aren't, except maybe they have less because naturally, obviously, they don't necessarily have the financial issues. But still, I know loads of them. One's a composer who, well, he's my step uncle essentially. He's got, you know, he's been through a lot, and it just made me realize, you know, there's nothing more to the money. It's just a materialistic thing. But to answer your question, I actually, my poison was cannabis, and I was very, very, very scared of every other substance around me. I don't know why. I just thought there's something about the thought of being around class A's that thought, okay, that is, you know, and I always thought I had an addictive personality. So I thought I don't ever want to get to that stage, because I don't, Lord knows what the hell, you know, hell would happen to me then, you know what I mean? But then again, even alone, just on that one substance alone, I managed to completely put myself in this delusional world, which was just really occupying my mind, while the inevitable was just, you know, waiting at the door to be like, I'm still here, you know? So I didn't avoid it. I was around it all the time. I just don't think I ever found anything fascinating about the other kind of substances. I actually kind of saw the way people were in them, and I thought they are much more out of touch from reality than I think I was, although I was very much out of touch with it, you know, every day smoking, and it has a toll on you, you know, a massive toll, but I just couldn't quite get myself there.
Well, I think the thing is, especially in the whole drug stuff, I've dabbled. I was a hardcore DJ, for God's sake. Do you get what I mean? It was just normal. I don't know about now, but it was just normal. It was so easy to get sucked into it. But the thing is, especially with mental health stuff, it's fine saying, "Oh, it takes all of that stuff away. I don't have to deal with it." But there will be that one day, in a week, 2 weeks, a month, 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, where you crack.
You do.
And that's it. And this is why I must admit, when it comes to MANUP, every now, not much, but every now and again, we get people saying you should, to get rid of all mental illness, do meditation. Actually, meditation is a good thing in some circumstances. Meditation is not a one size fits all. CPD or whatever it's called, CBD, you know, thing on there, where the amount of brands what will come through, it slowed down a bit where they come through. It's like, oh, this will cure depression, or this will cure anxiety. So no, it won't. Maybe it does with some people, but until there's actually hardcore evidence of it, it can actually cause, it just masks it.
I absolutely agree. I mean, I was completely unaware of how well it does such a thing. And I think I as you said, you just crack at some point, and I literally just reached that point. And after spending now a good 6 months away from this, I could never go back there again. Even if I wanted to, I just know there is no way that I would see I can't see anything else but a time in my life where I clearly wasn't happy with myself to some extent, to want to actually suppress parts of me that weren't okay. And this is easier said, you know, than actually you being like, oh yes, you know, I've been through so much, yet I'm here. But there's so much that goes on behind people, and especially when they're using a substance to mask it, I think you have to be so careful and gentle with those people, because they are just completely, one, they're unaware, and two, they just lack the ability to kind of see, I think, things from a place where, you know, it's for them, you know, hey, listen, we want to help you, but you have to some point, I felt like I had to help myself. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's so hard for someone that is like going through that substance abuse, because it's such an overwhelming responsibility to think, you know, I have to actually look after myself, when you feel like such a victim already, because you just feel like, oh well, you know, what about me, when it is very much about you, but you just feel like, you know, you just want more help, but you don't know how to get it, so you resort to self-medication. I don't know.
And I think that's the thing. It's just so easy to get into it now, isn't it? It's just so acceptable, and I think that's kind of scary. And that so the one thing is then I'm probably skipping all over the place here. You're a rapper. You write your own lyrics as well.
Yeah.
You don't rap about drugs.
No.
You don't rap about women or whatever else. I've
Right.
heard some of your stuff. You rap about real stuff.
I try to, yeah.
You've made your career really, really hard.
I know. I tell myself every day, I'm like, I
don't want to piss on you. I don't want to piss on your fire. Do you get what I mean? Because I think you're in that. You are good at what you do. Now I've listened to coverage. Obviously, I've had to do the due diligence of that word and all this, but it's just like, who am I trying to? So you must have heard a lot of Tom McDonald. You must have heard of Tom McDonald on YouTube.
That is a very familiar name.
He's I'm not a great fan of him, but he does rap about some real hardcore stuff, but he's independent, like Tech9 and all this kind of stuff. He claims he's the biggest independent. He's not. Tech9 is, everyone knows that, but anyway, don't get me started on that. But no, Tom McDonald's, he's gone from actually rapping about some really good stuff to being extreme to stand out.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's been really extreme. I've just in my, I don't want to make it a Tom McDonald show, but because I think he's lost his cause a little bit because he's gone so extreme just to stand out.
Yeah.
To get listened to. Am I making sense or am I waffling?
No, you're making a lot of sense. And I feel like I feel like as an artist, to me, what that sounds like is someone that's trying to be heard.
Yeah.
Because he has something very important to say. And I'm so aware of that fact as well, that what I'm trying to do and say is going to go probably over most people's heads.
Yeah.
Just because maybe they're not ready for that yet, or they hear about that too much, or that's not what hip hop means for them. Do you know what I mean? And I absolutely respect that. It's fine. It's not anything I can really worry about. It's not in my control. But there's just something about, for me at least, being able to narrate and talk to people about the reality of life, especially for someone my age or even younger, who is surrounded by this very culture I grew up in. Drugs everywhere, gangsters all, they're just like, they exist, they coincide in this industry. That I mean, in terms of the type of people it brings, it's just, and the influence that the music has on even kids, like, they just walk around. One day they're listening to techno, and then the next they've listened to like 4 drill artists and they're wearing Nike tracksuits and speaking like them. Yeah. And I'm just thinking, who are you? What are you trying to mimic? What is it in the music that makes you feel you want to be like them? Yeah. And so I'm trying to look at, is it the sense of power you feel? Is it the sense of pride? Is it, do you want to feel confident? And I'm trying to do that, but by talking about, going through the toughest things in life and coming over that. Yeah. Because I don't think there's anything more powerful than being your own best friend and being able to get through everything, knowing that you did that for yourself. Does that make sense?
No, it does. Yeah, absolutely.
And I that's the goal. I understand that it's not obviously everyone's cup of tea, but there's just something about doing something like that I feel could really help impact people. Yeah. Much more than anything, because I know I never had that growing up, so I would love to have the opportunity to at least influence 1 or 2 people. That's fine by me.
Yeah, I think you will, man. So how do you, you've been through a lot through 21 quite clearly, and it sounds like you're now back on the straight and narrow, as they say. Absolutely. Because you're an independent, I know you've got your family, but how will you make sure that you, the best you can, keep yourself on the straight and narrow mentally? The reason I ask that is because one of the things I had to do with MANUP, as I say, MANUP's been a registered charity for 3 months or so, not very long, basically. It's been run, but I decided that I needed to, make sure that I was being held accountable for everything that I say. And also actually for people to watch my back as well, to go, Dan, you need a few days off. Does that kind of make sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
What keeps you on track? Because you've got, I don't want to be doom and gloom, but you're 21, you're in a very talented. You're in a bloody good industry, as in for industry. I do love the independent artists on hip hop. I don't like the commercial crap you listen on the radio. How do you hold yourself accountable to make sure I'm not going to fall over? If
Really, it does. No, it does. It does. And for me, it's definitely been my mother's my backbone, pretty much. She has been. And the reason I say her in particular is because I literally tell her everything. There's nothing I hide from her. Me and my mother have a very strong relationship like that. So she's always very honest and you know, checks me before I go into a space where I'm like, you know, okay, Zach, listen, you need to think about what you're doing again. I'm like, okay, mom's saying it, it means something. And also I have 4 very, very, very good friends that are all on a similar path with me.
Yeah.
And they're always very honest, and they're not yes men. That's the one thing about them. Yes men and women, actually. They're very, very honest, and they're blunt, and so they always keep me in check. So I really do rely in them. And I guess really the one that is this most scary but an overwhelming thing to which I use at least to keep me on the straight and narrow, really, is knowing that I have, or I like to believe I have a responsibility, not just for myself, but for other people, because I don't know loads of people, you know, who are trying to do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I want to be one of those people that does something for those people. And to do that, it means you have to hold yourself accountable. You need to be professional, and you need to be authentic. You need to be there to show up every day or every other day, whatever the schedule is. But that is the most scary one, but the one that really has been keeping me on track, because I'm very idealistic. I like to vision things. Sometimes they keep me, you know, sort of thinking, okay, where do I want to take this? So that's really how I keep myself in check.
Okay. So on that, so if you visualize a lot of stuff as well, which is a good thing, how do you take action? Because I guess I'm creative and all sorts.
Yeah.
Sometimes, especially maybe it's the BPD stuff as well. Sometimes I can go in my creative bubble and think of all of these wonderful ideas and don't actually action them.
Yeah, it's sort of, you need the groundedness to actually execute. Really, that comes from, I'm so lucky again, because my friends are so, they're not ideological, they're very logical beings, that they're practical, on the ground people.
Yeah.
So I always go to them, and whenever I'm too dreamy, they're like, okay, you know, Zach, listen, hello, like, what you doing? Come on, like, how are you gonna actually put this into reality? So I really rely on my friends. But when it comes to actually, if I'm on my own and I don't have that input, the one that is, which is actually one of the hardest things I have to actually do as well, being idealistic, is because I like to see the end goal. Then the little journey sometimes feels really intimidating to get on, you know, the first 2-3 steps. But I think it's just you just do it. I think you do just have to do it. And I hate to say that, because it's like, oh, great, the same thing everyone else says. But I genuinely feel like you just have to take that first step, whatever that means.
Yeah.
No matter how far you are, I think. I've always found that that's, you know, the moment you take the first 5 steps, you're already closer to the finish line than you are at the start after a certain point. Do you know what I mean?
No, I think that's good. So I've got one more question then, because I think we've gone over that 20, but that's cool. So say for example, we're here. Say there's somebody watching this who's young, who's had a bit of a crap life, and yeah, again, I think you're in that kind of. Let me rephrase that one. When you messaged the page and you said, I saw your profile, obviously, I always stalk people, I have to now. But it's just like, you're 21, you've had PTSD, you've had a bit of a rough life and all this kind of stuff. And the minute you said like the more serious stuff, I feel won't sound there, I was like, he's only 21. Has he really been through that? So if somebody's watching this and they're being undermined about how they feel, what would you say to those, if that made sense?
It does.
Just put you on the spot there, mate.
No, it's fine. It's such a good question, though. I think it's something I'm learning to do to this day, especially after being sort of emotionally manipulated to a space where you are used to being grateful for the bare minimum.
Yeah.
So you don't see that the normal level is actually appropriate, because you think you should be grateful for pretty much nothing. And I think the advice I would give to someone that feels undermined about what they've been through, I think I would really, oh God, I think the toughest thing, but yeah, it's the most important thing, is to actually have some compassion for yourself. And I don't know what that means for anyone, because I feel like, I mean, showing compassion, I feel like can be so subjective, whether it's saying, you know, it's all right, Zach, you're going to be all right, or whether you do something to make yourself feel better physically. I think it's different for everyone, but I think you have to validate your own experience, knowing that what you've been through was authentic, because it was authentic to you. You went through that, and that put you in a place, and that was hard for you. That was a challenge for you. That is an experience within itself. And I think that is the only thing you need to validate, because you don't need to compare yourself to someone else's journey, because the one life you live is your own.
Yeah.
And that's the one you get to validate your life through, really, because you only feel your own self, not someone else's. You can, if you're an empath, you can understand through your emotions, maybe, but it doesn't mean you don't have to not validate yourself. You are just as much of a human as everyone else, and equally as important. So definitely have some compassion for yourself if you can find a place to make that work for you, and understand that your experience is just as valid as anyone else.
That was a good call, my friend.
Thank you.
No, there you go. Right, let me just do the whole recording thing. 1 second, mate.